This lesson is Advanced Page Layout. In this lesson, you'll learn how to create a fixed width 2-column layout with a header and a footer using CSS. Specifically, you'll be learning about the float and clear properties and how to use them to create columns. So before we get started, you'll want to define the DW6 Lessons folder as a site in Dreamweaver. And once you've defined that folder as a site, you'll want to open the layout.html page, and you'll see the page as it's seen here. So this page already has some layout built in, and if you click anywhere in this top header next to the Organic Utopia logo, we can take a quick look at what this looks like by looking at the tag selector in the bottom left-hand corner. So the tag selector shows us that there's a div with the ID called container, and that's this entire box. And then when we click on div with the ID header, we can see that that header is nested inside the container. And that container, by the way, is 960 pixels wide. And we can see that by going over to the CSS Styles panel, clicking on the container style, make sure you're in the All section. And here we can see all the properties for that container. So we have a background color, we have a height and a width, and it's also got auto margins, which is making it centered within the page. I do want to point out here that the height of 850 pixels is really arbitrary, and oftentimes we wouldn't put a pixel height in there. We would let the content of the page define the height. However, having this pixel height allows us to see this in the browser. So let's just take a quick look at this in the browser. And here you can see what you're working with. So what you'll be doing is you'll be adding some divs here, and we'll be adding a navigation, a left column, a right column, and a footer. So let's go ahead and do that. And to begin, you can go up to the following menu, Insert, Layout Objects, Div Tag. Now you could have also gone to the Insert panel on the right-hand side of the screen. Both will do the same thing. And this window is going to allow you to add div elements inside of that container, but you have to be very specific. Right now it's going to try to insert any div you create at the insertion point. We need to be a little more specific, so let's click on that insert menu, and here we can say insert after a tag. And then the question is, what tag do you want to insert this new div after? And the answer is the header. So if you click on the menu to the right and choose div ID equals header, that ensures that whatever you create will be added after the header. And now we need to name the ID that you're going to be creating, and we'll call this navigation. So let's immediately set the style for that navigation by clicking New CSS Rule. Once you do that, this window will appear. Just want to double check that navigation is selected here, highlighted, and then click OK. So we'll add a few properties here, including a background color. So let's click on the background category. And for now, let's just type in the following, pound 88B036. Now let's go ahead and click on the box category. And in the box category, let's give the width 100. But we're not going to make this pixels, we're going to make it percentage. So click percent. So what this will do is ensure that that navigation section stretches 100% of the way across the container. Now again, for the height, we'll put in a pixel value, in this case 36. So this tells you that you can mix and match to a certain degree percentage and pixels, depending on what you're trying to do. So let's click OK. And then we get back to that Insert Div Tag menu, and then we click OK again. And we can see here that the navigation has been added, and Dreamweaver also put some placeholder text in here, which is great for being able to quickly identify what that div is. So now we're going to quickly add two other containers, the main column and a sidebar. So let's go ahead and add the main first. So Insert, Layout Objects, Div Tag again, Insert After Tag. Which tag are you going to insert it after? The navigation. And let's go ahead and within the ID field type main. And let's just click OK for now. We're not going to create a rule right away. So click OK, and you can see that that div appears. Let's go ahead and do this quickly again. Insert layout objects, div tag, insert after tag. Which tag? The main tag. And what are we going to put in here? Well, this ID will be the sidebar. Let's click OK again. And one more time, and this will be the last one. Insert layout objects, div tag, insert after tag, and the tag that you're going to be inserting it after is the sidebar. You should be noticing a pattern here. And then the ID will be footer. Now, for the footer, let's go ahead and create a new CSS rule as well. And this will just help us identify and see how that footer reacts to the main and the sidebar columns. So click New CSS Rule, click OK, and then click on the background category. And for the background color, let's just type in $CCC. That's going to be a light gray. So let's click OK, click OK one more time. Now you can click anywhere in the background so you can just take a look at what we've got here. So you've got the foundation of your page, and there's a navigation section, a header, main, sidebar, and footer. But now we need to style that main and sidebar element so that we can see how they react to floating and clearing. So the quick and easy way to do this is let's go ahead and go to the main section. So click anywhere inside that main div, and then click in the tag selector, div pound main. And the reason you need to do this is because you're about to create a style for that main div. And this is just giving Dreamweaver a little bit more direction about which ID you'd like to create a style for. So let's go over to the CSS Styles panel, click New CSS Rule, and you can see that it's trying to do a rule for pound container pound main. This is actually a little too specific, so let's click the less specific button and then click OK. So now you'll want to click on the box category, and for the box category we'll type in a width here of 600, and then also click on the float menu and choose float right. Click OK, and what you'll see is that that main div goes over to the right hand side of the page. Now we can do the same thing for the sidebar. So again, I would suggest just clicking in the sidebar, going to the tag selector and clicking on that div of sidebar. Let's make a new style. Again, it does not need to be this specific, although it wouldn't hurt if it was, but let's just click less specific and then click OK. Click on the box category, and for width, let's go ahead and type 360. This time we're going to float this one to the left, then click OK. So what you've just done is you've floated the sidebar div to the left, the main div to the right. You add up the value of those two, and it's 960, which fits inside of that container. So you'll see something interesting in that the footer appears to go all the way up to this navigation section. This is because the sidebar and the main divs are both floated. So the footer is essentially unaware that those sidebar and main divs exist, and it's trying to go all the way up to the top. So what we need to do here is clear the footer. Before we clear it, let's just go ahead and add some content to the sidebar and the main div. So let's go down to our Files panel and double click on Main Content, select all, copy, go back to layout.html, select that placeholder text where it says Content for ID Main, and paste. And the same thing, you'll want to go back to the Files panel, double click on sidebar content.html, select all that text, go back to layout.html, select the placeholder content for sidebar, and paste. So this actually makes the floating problem even more apparent. So again, here we can see the problem. That footer is stretching all the way to the top, and we have a very strange layout at this point. However, we can fix this quickly by adding the clear property to the footer. So let me show you how to do that. Go over to the CSS Styles panel, double click the footer style, go down to the box category, and choose Clear Both. Go ahead and click OK. Scroll down and you'll see that that footer is now at the very bottom of the page. That's exactly what we want. So what's happening here? Well, that footer, by having the Clear Both property, essentially says nothing floating is allowed to either the left or the right of me. So it's going to move down to the first location it possibly can, where there's nothing floating. And that means after those two columns. So we're in pretty good shape here. This is a good foundation for our page. Let's choose File, Save. If you want, you can take a quick look at this in the browser. So that's it for now. In this lesson, you learned a little bit about the float and clear properties and how to use them to make a two-column fixed width